In a previous video, I showed you how to create this random quote site. So every time we refresh the site, we get a new quote. The back end of this is a Google Sheet like this, and the front end is something like Card. Pretty simple with some code that I already wrote for you that includes the H1 style and fetching the app script. And we have to go into extensions app script to create the basically webhook or web app that powers this. But I want to show you one little change in how that may affect how we do everything, or how to make that change. We have this quote here, and it's a single quote. It's a single piece of text from a single column, but we have this basically two parts of this. We have a author and we have the quote itself. And I want to make a little change, which is going to have a lot of different things we have to do. I want to put this author underneath it, very specifically underneath it, and have two separate things. So let's see how we can do this. I'm going to do this live here for you and show you all the changes. So first off, we're going to make a copy of our sheet, and we're going to call this quotes and authors. We need this because we don't want to mess up the old one. We want to create a new one here. So what I will do is I'll go back to my dashboard and I'll just create a new version of this. So we're just going to make a copy of that. While that's happening, I want to split these into two columns. Enter column to the right. We don't need to see everything. We'll just do that, and we'll do equals split. And we want to split it by the hyphen. So delimiter will be space, hyphen, space. We want to get as much of that as possible. And we'll true, I think. No, this will be false, actually. And there we go. We have our author and our quote. Copy paste all the way down. And what we're going to do is Command C, Shift Command V to copy and paste values. And we're just going to do a little spot check through it all. We see there is something else here. That's good that we're checking these. So not all of them are working. So what is this one has no author. So we'll put unknown. Unknown. Again, unknown. We have another problem down here, which we will get to, which is our author is not specifically, this is not a hyphen, right? So we'll take all of those, and we'll just do it again. We can actually do this. Actually, I don't want to do that. I just want to go to the ones here, and actually to make it easier to see, we will do this. There we go. Now we see them. But which ones have it? It doesn't matter. We will find one that does and see if it works. So we'll split it again. So instead of, we'll actually rewrite over this. Split. Text is here. The delimiter is what I copy and pasted. False. There we go. Perfect. And so now we can copy paste all of these that have nothing and see if we have anything. From here to here. Let's try that again. Copy and paste. There we go. So now we have all of our authors. Again, we can write some unknown here. And we have to get the copy paste for the values and just put unknown for any of all. And there it is. It's all cleaned up. Okay, so we can actually delete this first column now, and we have authors in B column and the quote in the A column. So let's go to our extensions. We will have to do something else here. Let's go back to our site. We have created a copy. Let's go to it. And we're going to create two blocks. We're actually going to just duplicate it. The top one will be our quote, which actually doesn't change at all. We will need to change the URL here. That'll be in a second. And here we need to change the URL as well. But the question is, how do we get to do gets? We can only use do get once. And so how do we use, we're going to use some parameters to get a webhook so that we know where we're going to get it from. So we say get random quote. We actually have to, we want to get, we can create this and author. And instead of a random index 0, we're actually going to get the value from B, get 0 here, and get variable return random author. The author there will be 1. So from the same line, whichever random index we have, we're going to get the first item, which is going to be the A column, and the second item, which is going to be the B column here. And we are going to return two things. We're going to return random quote array. And we need to create that array. Variable random quote array equals first one random quote, comma, random author. And so we can always test this, right? We can say, we're going to run this and see what happens. So we're going to add a logger here to actually see this when we run it in here. Great, we have a quote and we have an author. So now how do we get it in here? Well, parameters are get random quote. There we go. We're going to change that. So now this random quote is going to be 2 items. So variable random quote is actually going to be the first item here. And variable, random there. Variable random quote will be equal random first item, and then author will be random 1. Call this quote. And depending on what we're asking for, we want to return different things. So in one case, we want to return a quote, and in another case, we want to return the author. But how do we do that? Well, we can add parameters to our URL that we're sending. So we can say there's some params here, parameters. Then we can say quote, let's just say this, quote author, or author equals parameters. And we set the parameters, and we can say parameters dot author. Sorry, it's going to be actually, we can do URL dot parameter. And now we just have to put in the text author in here, and we're going to get some text here. And based on that, we can say if quote or author equals, put that in here, is equal to author. Actually, let's do quote first, quote, then return the quote. We can also say, we can do an else here, but let's just do if author, then we want to return the author. So now based on this parameter that we're going to give the URL, we can either get the quote or the author. So let's click new deployment, and I'll show you how to add this parameter to our URL. Again, we're going to set our web app to access as us. So anyone can use it. We're going to update the deployment. We're going to get a URL here. And I think once we use it, you'll see how this is so easy. Let's use it in our, if we put it in our bar, we're going to get some problems. We'll do it incognito mode. We're not going to get any answer here. This is a problem. But we add a parameter here. We go question mark. And we have to remember what we added as the parameters, which is parameter author. Actually, this is probably equals, let's say quote. And there we go. We got something. But let's rename this quote or author. Let's update that. New deployment. Get a new URL here. And I'll show you again, just another example, how we're going to use this. Updating the deployment. Copy the URL. Go to our incognito window. And again, we're going to add question mark, quote or author equals quote. There we go. And then now we have author here. We're going to get some author. Oh, no, perfect. So our URL is working, but one weird thing that's happening is that this is absolutely random, right? We're getting a random quote, and every time we execute this web app, we're getting a random one in return. So these authors and these quotes won't be the same. So let's do, instead of getting a random one, we'll get our quote and author, and we'll check if it's the day of, we'll check if it's the same day. We'll add to our sheet here, day, and we can do equals today. And then now we want to set, so every day will be tagged with one of these days. We will just do this. So from now on, for the next year, we will get a different thing. And how do we set this up? We will do here, instead of quotes, instead of variable random index, so what we've done here is instead of a random getting quote author, I'm getting the dates in the C column. I'm doing a for loop here, and then we're looking at the integer of, this is basically days, like every day of the year has an integer, 1, 2, 3, 4, until 366, 365 without a leap year. We're taking today's day, finding the integer of that. We're parsing integer, utilities.format date, and we're using this day, D. And then we're going to look for the integer of the date in the sheet, and we're comparing them. And if these two match, we're going to reveal the random quote and the random author, or actually this is just quote and author. And then we're going to put them together, and then we're going to return both of these at the same time. So now, instead of getting a random one every single time, and we have a random quote and a random author that are different, we're going to get the same one every single day. Today, we're going to get this one, Ralph Waldo Emerson. So again, let's just go through the whole thing, and we're going to get the new deployment now. And I will show you how to edit this in the when we add it to our table. So we're going to add it here. We have our exact same stuff here, HTML, CSS. We're going to replace the web app, but we're going to add at the end of it question mark. And then we have to remember that it's this parameter, quote or author. And we want quote at the beginning. Quote equals quote. We'll take all of that and we'll put it down here. In this one, we'll actually title this author. We'll replace this URL here with this one, and instead of quote, we'll put author. We'll replace this label with quote, just so we remember. Okay, click done. We are going to save the changes. We're going to publish to a new one. Instead of random, it's today's quote. Today quote. See if that exists. Today's quote. That also. So today quote. Let's go with that. We'll publish these changes and let's see if it works. We're going to visit our site. We have today's quote. Does it show up? So I think we're having an issue because these two scripts have URL. Got that because I went over here and saw that syntax error identify URL has already been created. So let's rename this. Instead of URL, it'll be quote URL. And where we have URL here, we'll rename that quote URL. Click done. Let's see if that helps. Publish changes. And let's look at our issue again. Inspect. We have to change these because I think we're using this variable text as well again. And we are using probably the same ID here. ID quote. Yeah. And then here, we probably want to change this to ID to author. Change this URL to author URL. Change, where is it? URL, author URL. So now we have quote here, ID quote. So yeah, so now it won't change the same quote. So this ID in the H1 has to be different. Quote URL. Let's make sure this variable text is quote text, and then this is quote text, and just see if there's any other quote text. And then change this author URL, author URL. Let's change this to author text, and change these variables to author text. Let's save it and see if that fixes it. Hit publish again. Great, but now we're just in two different, we have to do a little bit of styling as well. I think we're getting the wrong thing here. Let's look at our, I think these are flipped. Quote, quote. Well, anyways, we can flip it down here. And also we need to add a hyphen. So let's do that in the app script. Return author. We'll do this plus author. So we'll just add that to author. But I think this is a little, I think this is flipped for some reason. But let's see. Let's deploy. I think we can actually save the deployment. Let's update that deployment. I don't think we have to change the URL. I think it's going to be the exact same URL. We can double check here. Yeah, perfect. So now we just have to refresh. We're also going to add a bit of a space here, or even a break, or even another text, perhaps. Just 3 of these. Click done, and save just to make these nicer. Okay, we got it now because we saw that we just have to, we had to rename this quote to author. So now all of this works together. ID author is, everything's author URL, author text, let author text here, author text dot inner HTML, author dot append child. So what was happening was the quote was being appended. Each of the elements was getting in, but this one was going to the quote appending child. Now it's going to author. So now we have a quote and we have author, and we have an absolute wonderful daily quote. And now this daily quote actually will be daily. It will change every single day. Anytime you refresh it, it'll be the same one. And that's because we're using this date column now in our, instead of getting a random one, we're using this integer here, just as a refresher. Hopefully this was exciting for you. And grab this URL. I will also share the updated items from here in the app script here in this embed.